The morning started like any other. Sunlight spilling over the city, birds darting through narrow streets, engines humming, and people moving in their habitual patterns. Children laughed on playgrounds, oblivious of the world beyond their small universe, while office workers scrolled through messages, sipping bitter coffee. Scientists monitored satellites, unaware that a ripple in the universe was about to reach their instruments. Everything was normal, predictable, comforting in its monotony, until the first anomaly appeared. At first, it was subtle, a sensor blinking, a reading slightly off, but enough to trigger the alert systems that most ignored. Patterns shifted imperceptibly, like a heartbeat skipping for a moment before resuming. No one could articulate the threat, yet curiosity and instinct led some to probe further. Satellites recorded disruptions in Earth's orbit. Magnetic fields flickered, and strange energy pulses danced across the atmosphere. Humans were uneasy but reassured themselves that it was just another technical glitch. Then the ground itself betrayed them. A sudden, unnatural pull reversed a familiar weight of the world. Cars lifted from roads. Furniture floated like feathers, and people struggled to maintain contact with solid ground. Screams echoed in the air, mingling with the grinding of twisted metal as buildings began to fail under the strain of altered gravity. Parents clutched children. Co-workers grasped one another. Scientists frantically activated emergency protocols. And yet, the chaos intensified. The laws of physics that had governed life since the dawn of humanity now seemed negotiable. Gravity itself had become an adversary. People flailed helplessly, objects spinning out of control. Streets became rivers of debris, and the sky filled with what should have been grounded structures. In the midst of this pandemonium, instinct overrode panic. Humans pushed, pulled, improvised, and adapted. Some anchored themselves to anything immovable. Others grabbed ropes, beams, anything to resist the invisible force. Even in terror, the essence of humanity, the refusal to succumb, emerged. Amid floating cars and toppling streetlights, communication networks struggled to function. Satellites blinked as their orbits shifted. Signals scrambled. Warnings that might have prevented panic arrived too late or not at all. Meanwhile, an unmistakable hum resonated across cities. It was not mechanical, not terrestrial. People paused midair, eyes widening in disbelief. The sound was everywhere and nowhere, a vibrating pulse that seemed to originate from the sky itself. Then, alien ships became visible, enormous vessels hovering above urban landscapes, their forms smooth, impossibly large, radiating a light that made the air shimmer. They were alien and yet undeniably intelligent. Humans understood instinctively that the force stripping gravity from their planet was emanating from these ships. A hush fell over the floating masses as comprehension replaced panic. This was not an accident, not malfunction, but a deliberate act. Communication from the aliens came as waves of resonance, converted by Earth's instruments into comprehensible words. We control gravity now. You will comply. The message was both simple and terrifying, devoid of negotiation or empathy. Humanity, a species that had once looked to the stars with curiosity and ambition, now realized the scale of its vulnerability. Entire nations were incapacitated, armies and governments struggling to coordinate, while suspended in a world where the simplest act of survival required ingenuity. Yet, amidst the despair, human nature refused to bow. Soldiers used magnetic boots and harnesses. Scientists jerry-rigged devices to counteract gravitational shifts in localized areas. Parents and children navigated floating debris to reach safety. Every improvised maneuver, every small act of resistance, became a testament to human resilience. Reports filtered in from around the globe. Tokyo's skyline twisted like taffy. Cars tangled midair. London's bridges floated above the River Thames, unsupported. New York's Central Park was a chaos of floating trees and park benches. Yet within this chaos, individuals made choices that defied instinct. A young engineer calculated trajectories, using the temporary vacuum to propel herself toward a floating laboratory to secure critical research. In Brazil, a fisherman held onto a buoy, rescuing a small group swept into the ocean currents by inverted gravity. HFY was evident not in armies or governments, but in these isolated bursts of human ingenuity. Humans were unprepared, overwhelmed and terrified, yet they improvised faster than the aliens anticipated. Their intelligence, adaptability, and courage emerged as their first silent victory. The aliens observed from above. Their ships pulsed with energy, manipulating gravitational fields with precision and ease. The humans' actions, while impressive, were small in scale. Entire cities remained at their mercy, and yet the aliens did not fully anticipate the chaos that would emerge from that human unpredictability. It was not strength or technology that defined humanity, but persistence, creativity, and the refusal to surrender. In laboratories, scientists realized that the gravitational suppression was linked to a central system on each vessel. Armed with this knowledge, teams began theorizing methods to counteract or disable localized fields. Satellites and drones were repurposed as probes. Magnetic materials, cables, and even balloons became tools in an ad hoc defense strategy. Humanity was improvising weapons and methods with materials designed for completely different purposes. As hours passed, the floating debris became an obstacle course of survival. Vehicles collided midair, buildings groaned under uneven pressure, and the sky became a tangle of chaos. Yet humans adapted quickly, using these obstacles to their advantage. A small group in the European Alps used suspended rock formations to climb toward a compromised research station, tapping into alien interference signals. In the United States, an engineering team stabilized an entire city block by constructing temporary tethers from floating steel girders. News broadcasts, barely operational, amplified human ingenuity as local communities broadcast solutions to others. While alien ships dominated the skies, humans began carving out pockets of control, small yet significant footholds where gravity was partially neutralized or resisted. The HFY principle was clear. The impossible was not defeated by power alone, but by determination, cleverness, and unity in adversity. Humanity's first attempt at countercommunication involved signals and transmissions, attempts to reason or confuse the aliens. Interference waves, light pulses, and makeshift jamming devices were deployed from satellites and aircraft, often at great personal risk. Many failed, but each failure taught new lessons. HFY shone through in the learning process. Humans iterated faster than the aliens predicted, adapting tactics in real time. The unpredictability of human response became both a survival mechanism and a weapon of its own. Individual stories of heroism spread rapidly, transmitted via satellite radio and the fragile internet infrastructure that remained. A mother saved her child from floating debris. A firefighter anchored an entire street with improvised cables. A teenager rigged a drone to stabilize a fallen antenna critical to communication. Each micro-action contributed to a global tapestry of resistance. The initial chaos had revealed the human spirit, but survival alone was not enough. The gravity-manipulating aliens had made one thing clear. They controlled the environment, but humans controlled their will. Engineers, scientists, and civilians began collaborating with a singular focus: to reclaim what had been taken. Zero gravity had forced humans to rethink physics, to improvise in ways that their textbooks had never prepared them for. Streets, buildings, and floating debris became laboratories of experimentation. Communities improvised anchoring methods using cables, magnets, and counterweights, creating localized zones where survival became slightly more predictable. Every anchor, every rope, every calculated throw of a tool was a testament to human ingenuity and their refusal to be entirely subdued. Teams discovered patterns in the aliens' gravity manipulation. The energy pulses had a rhythm, a frequency that allowed temporary stabilization in small pockets. Scientists and mathematicians, working without pause, began mapping these patterns. They repurposed satellites, drones, and even household electronics to transmit interference waves. These waves were weak, temporary, and unpredictable, but they represented the first steps in human offense. Civilians and volunteers joined, adapting quickly. HFY was not in the size of the army, but in the rapid learning, the creativity, the improvisation. Humans were improvising weapons and tactics faster than the aliens anticipated. Every failed attempt was data, every small success a foothold. In the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, humanity refused to succumb. As coordination improved, humans began attempting small-scale counterattacks. Drones carried magnetic disruptors toward alien devices, Makeshift energy conductors interfere with gravity fields in localized zones. Initially, these attacks were primitive, often failing spectacularly, but each misstep generated crucial knowledge. Engineers realized that certain alien nodes emitted gravity stabilization fields in predictable cycles, and targeting them during their inactive phases produced measurable results. Soldiers, scientists, and volunteers adapted, improvising harnesses and propulsion methods that leveraged the zero-gravity environment. What had initially been a disadvantage became a tool. The humans' understanding of physics, improvisation, and instinct was turning the alien advantage into an unpredictable battlefield. Communities in different regions began to communicate despite fractured networks. HFY was evident in the collective intelligence emerging from desperation. A team in Europe developed floating scaffolds using suspended steel beams to bridge damaged areas. In Asia, teams built magnetic pulleys to transport essential equipment through zero-gravity zones. In North America, engineers converted abandoned aircraft into temporary transport nodes, using jet thrusters and counterweights to stabilize them midair. Every initiative built upon another, a cascading effect of adaptation. Humans were learning not only to survive, but to challenge the aliens using creativity rather than brute force. Even the most terrified citizens contributed, improvising solutions that drew upon instinct, intelligence, and collaboration. Resistance was spreading, invisible yet undeniable, a subtle force of human will. The aliens reacted, increasing the intensity of gravity fluctuations, attempting to crush pockets of resistance with sudden shifts. Yet humans adapted faster than expected. Medical teams, engineers, and civilians learned to use these shifts strategically, propelling themselves across gaps, launching supplies, or disarming obstacles with precisely timed maneuvers. The unpredictability of humans became their greatest asset. The aliens, whose technology had assumed humans would act in predictable patterns, now faced a species that calculated trajectories instinctively, adapted instantly, and utilized chaos as a weapon. Every improvisation, every microaction of survival became a subtle strike against alien control. HFY was no longer a concept. It was tangible, visible in floating cities where humans were no longer just surviving. They were learning to manipulate the battlefield itself. Part 2 of Section 2, 500 words. As days passed, humans gained confidence. They had discovered that alien gravity nodes were not isolated. They communicated through a central control system. Understanding this network became the next priority. Scientists theorized that disrupting even one node could cascade into instability across the alien grid. Teams formed to test this hypothesis. Engineers and volunteers used magnetic pulses, sound wave disruptors, and improvised drones to target specific nodes. Early attempts were risky. Failures often meant destruction of makeshift zones, but the humans' willingness to experiment, to take calculated risks, proved critical. HFY shone through not in the size of armies or firepower, but in the courage to act and the intellect to refine each attempt. Every success built momentum. Every failure became a lesson. The first tangible victory came unexpectedly. A small group of engineers, using repurposed satellites, disrupted a minor node in Europe. Gravity partially returned to a district, allowing humans to stabilize buildings, recover equipment, and rescue trapped civilians. The effect spread, demonstrating the principle that alien systems, though powerful, were not invincible. News traveled rapidly through makeshift channels, inspiring other teams to attempt similar operations. Civilians in zero-gravity zones now worked alongside trained specialists, improvising solutions that would have seemed impossible before. HFY was evident in the human capacity for adaptation, creativity, and collaboration under extreme pressure. Humans were learning to turn a planet-wide disadvantage into an advantage of their own making. With partial stabilization came strategic offensive operations. Humans developed methods to exploit the aliens' predictable cycles, timing their actions during temporary lulls in gravitational control. Engineers launched drones carrying interference devices. Soldiers coordinated floating attacks on alien platforms, and civilians assisted by improvising anchoring systems, counterweights, and supply lines. Improvisation became the foundation of warfare. Humans were creating chaos within the alien order, demonstrating that intelligence, creativity, and determination could rival advanced technology. Each successful mission strengthened morale, reinforcing the HFY theme. Humanity could endure, adapt, and strike back despite overwhelming odds. In parallel, humans began studying alien communication methods. The resonance-based transmissions hinted at vulnerabilities in coordination. Mathematicians and linguists worked to decode patterns, discovering that disrupting these frequencies caused minor malfunctions in gravity control. This opened a new front for resistance. Humans could now attack strategically, not blindly. HFY was evident in the ability to exploit subtle weaknesses with intelligence and foresight, turning the aliens' greatest advantage into a targetable flaw. Even ordinary citizens contributed, observing patterns, recording anomalies, and suggesting experiments. Humanity's collective intellect became a force that rivaled the aliens' technological superiority.